Fast Cars, Fast Money, Fast Podcast.
All right, guys, welcome back. It is Fast Cars, Fast Money, and it's week 3. If you guys are back, that probably means that you guys had a good week 2 at the road course, and if you're new, welcome. We break down the Cup Series, the Xfinity Series, and the Truck Series from a DFS standpoint all year long, kind of give you our thoughts, who we think is going to be good, who isn't going to be good, who you should be playing, kind of our strategies behind, the race. But we put together a spreadsheet, and if you guys want access to it, hop over on Twitter. It's at FastCarsFM. You guys can pull this up yourselves, read all of our notes, look at our interest levels, have it up side by side when you have your DraftKings account open and you're trying to select your 6 guys or get you a winning lineup. But looking at the Cup Series specifically for this video at Homestead, everybody, it's all in the headlines. Everyone is talking about this is the week of Kyle Larson and Tyler Reddick. And why is that? That's because they're very unique in the way that they can run their cars like an inch, maybe even less than that from the wall. And at Homestead, that's the fastest way around the track. So when Larson and Reddick want to push it, they can. And a lot of other drivers don't have that talent to be able to run that high. Now, you run the risk of, potentially cutting down a tire and, maybe even hurting your car more than helping it. But look for Larson and Reddick to be aggressive here. Look for them to, basically fight each other for who's running the fastest lap throughout the race. So we're pretty high on both of those guys. For this race, you probably want 2 to 3 dominators in your lineups. This week's a little bit different than the last 2 weeks, really. The first week at Daytona was just super speedway. You just pretty much play guys in the back. Last week, it was kind of almost like the same thing. There wasn't really that many laps, but now we're at a little bit more of a cookie cutter track. You're going to be seeing dominators play a much bigger factor into your lineup. So you really want to get guys in there that you think are going to move forward and going to be out front leading you laps. Like I mentioned earlier, if you watch the Xfinity race before you're watching this video, you're probably going to see a handful of guys hit the wall. And they're going to be okay because they have composite bodies. But when you come to the Cup Series, the bodies are different. They're steel bodies and they're very aero dependent, and they usually don't bounce back out like the Xfinity bodies do. So if a driver gets in the wall here, it's pretty much going to mean they're cutting down a tire and they're going to have to come down pit road. So it's probably going to happen, throughout the race. So don't be surprised when you see that. Also, there's a huge amount of tire fall off here. So you're going to see cars good on a short run and then other cars that are good on the long run, kind of managing their tires. And because of COVID, again, we don't have official qualifying. So this grid that you see is set based on a formula, not, who is running single car, fast speed laps. So just be careful of potentially where some of these guys are starting. They're either going to move up a ton of spots or maybe even move back a ton of spots, depending on the driver and the equipment they have. But either Rich or Coop, do you guys have any other additional kind of entry thoughts before we look at the driver specifically?
Well, I just want to say the same thing I said before the Xfinity breakdown. Your dominators could also be your big PD plays that you're going to want to play as well. But we'll get into that as we start talking about the drivers.
Only thing I have to say is Hamlin's your pole leader, and I'm not that scared of him. But I think he's a cheap play, and we'll get to that in a second.
All right, so if you're playing Denny Hamlin, Coop, who else are you pairing him with up there in this 10K and 11K range?
Well, he's not even in this range. So let's stick to this range for now. Kyle Busch obviously has got a lot of PD upside, and he's had it's not just this year. He's had a bunch of bad luck last year too. So if he can have a clean race, the dude's going to win. That's just, he races really well, but he gets caught up in a lot of stuff. So, he's expensive, but for good reason. He's starting 24th, tons of upside there. And then we mentioned Larson earlier. Larson's really good at this track, and he should be another great play. For me, out of this range, I think my favorite's Kevin Harvick, though. Reason being, I think he can get up there. I think he's got a very good chance of leading laps if we'll talk about Denny in a second, but if Denny's not leading laps, I think Harvick's got to be your second most likely to lead laps early in this race. And I think he's going to have a top 5 finish if he has a solid race. I really like Kevin Harvick.
Yeah, I mean, for this range, I like the Xfinity series. I'm probably looking at 2 drivers from this range as well. Even though we have better plays a little bit cheaper than we did in the Xfinity series. But I would probably lean Larson as my top play in this range just because he's so great at this track. He probably will end up being high owned just because everybody's talking about him. It's his first time back to this track in over a year, so he's definitely my top play here.
Yeah, and for me, I actually think Chase Elliott is my favorite play here. He was really fast here last year. It was kind of him and Hamlin battling it out. And if you guys remember, Chase Elliott was probably going to win the race, and then Joey Logano was a lap down and was blocking Elliott and wouldn't let him pass, and Hamlin eventually caught up to him and passed him for the win there. But, Elliott, I think he starts a little bit, towards the front, but I can see him getting some PD, moving forward, getting out front, leading laps, maybe even getting some fast laps for the laps that someone doesn't have fresher tires than him, or the laps that Larson and Reddick aren't, hugging the wall. So I like Elliott in that range. Gives you a little bit of salary relief too, instead of, Busch and Truex. And then my second favorite guy is probably Kevin Harvick. Harvick is just so good at these 1.5s. You can never really count him out. He does start 4th, so you kind of need him to finish around where he starts or lead laps. And it's going to be tough with some of the guys that you have starting in front of him. But if anyone can get around those guys, I'm going to put my money on Harvick. Those are the 2 guys out of that range I'm probably the most confident about. But as you can see, we have pretty high, interest level with all these guys, and DraftKings realizes that these guys are good plays. So, that's why they're the most expensive guys. All right, now we're getting down to the Denny Hamlin range here, Coop. So I'm assuming you like Denny Hamlin the most out of this range.
I like Denny a lot. I like Denny a lot, but I also like Byron for 2 different reasons. I think Byron has your PD upside. I mean, he's not going to, unless he has an issue, he's not going to finish 31st. He's only going to move up. Great play there. But Hamlin, I think Hamlin gets the early lead here, and I think he leads a lot of laps early. And I don't see, Denny falling too far back by the end of the race. I think he finishes up around the top, and I think if he can lead enough laps, get that clean air out front, I think he's got a really good shot at paying off that price. I think he's a cheaper option that's still a very good option. And I will mention too that I think Joey Logano, I don't think he's going to be high owned, and I think he might be a very good GPP play. Not somebody that I think is our favorite by any means, but I think he's very contrarian. And if Denny has an issue and Joey gets out front and he leads a ton of laps, I mean, it's a sneaky play.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I would probably say Denny Hamlin is my favorite in this range, although when I've started building and looking at stuff, I don't find myself in this range that much, just like I didn't in the Xfinity series. But, yeah, Denny Hamlin starting on the pole, it's Denny Hamlin. He's going to be fast. So if he gets the lead in the early part of the race, until the second stage, I don't see anybody passing him.
Yeah, and I'm kind of on the same boat there too. I'm a little skeptical of Hamlin just because I don't know how he's going to unload. There hasn't been any practice or qualifying. Like his first lap is going to be the green flag of the race. And there's so many other good cars up there. So, if I had to guess who's going to lead the early laps, it's probably Hamlin, but I'm just saying, I'm a little skeptical just because of the other guys that are around there, but I still think Hamlin is a really, really good play. I think Byron's really interesting too, because if you look at the guys right below him, I would probably categorize all 3 of these guys kind of in the same boat. Byron, DiBenedetto, and Reddick, they all start pretty deep in the field. And I think Byron's going to be overlooked because I think a lot of people, like you said, Rich, are going to struggle to get to this 9K range, especially if they're paying up for the 10K range. So I can see probably Byron being the lowest owned out of, DiBenedetto and Reddick. And I think he has as much upside, if not more upside, than some of the other guys around him. If I had to rank, I'd probably put Tyler Reddick first, and then probably William Byron, and then Matty D. But some of these 8K guys are pretty interesting, but I think Tyler Reddick is probably going to be drawing the most interest there.
Yeah, I agree with you. Both of those guys are great PD plays. I would lean with Reddick just because he's just like Larson, he can run the wall, but he does run the risk of wrecking because he's running so close to the wall. Yeah, I mean, I like all three of those plays.
Yeah, for me, I think my preference is either Reddick or Byron, or both. I just prefer them a little over Di Benedetto myself, but all three are fine plays. And then I like Bowman there too. I think this is a prove it to me race for Bowman. He's in that new equipment, and I think he's still looking to prove himself. And I really think that he's going to come out swinging. And in that price range, I think he's a fine GPP play too, because I think it's more obvious to go with those PD plays than it is for Bowman.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Bowman was really fast at the beginning of last year at the 1.5s. That's even where he got one of his wins. During the middle part of last year, he kind of fell off and, lost all the momentum that he had. But if you look at his finishes at the end of last year, during the playoffs at the 1.5 miles that they ran, I mean, yeah, he wasn't winning races, but he was running relatively well. He was consistently a top 8, top 7 car. And with a guy that is probably going to get overlooked in that range, if you're playing GPPs, it's a good way to be a little bit different than some of the other guys in that range. And Kurt Busch, unfortunately, he starts a little bit too high up for us to kind of get any interest there. Do you like anyone in this 7K range, Rich?
Oh, yeah, I like a couple guys here. I like Austin Dillon. He's generally pretty good at these 1.5-mile tracks. He offers, that little bit of PD upside. He's probably not going to lead any laps, but he can give you a solid top 10 finish and pay off that price tag. And then I like Chase Briscoe a lot. Starting 30th, offers great PD upside. He definitely has a top 10 car, just whether he can get up there and pass all the other cars that are really good up there as well. I mean, he's in the same equipment as Kevin Harvick, and we like Kevin Harvick here as well.
I think this is a really interesting range. For me, Chastain and Briscoe being rookies, I still want to see a little more. But starting 30th and 32nd, what do you have to lose? Both should move up. Both should do fine. But again, I still haven't gauged how well they're going to do throughout the season yet. In this range, I like Almirola. I think he had a sneaky good year last year. 1.5 miles, he raced really well. And I think that similar to Bowman, I think he might be overlooked. And I think he's a sneaky play. And then I like Bubba Wallace too. I think for the price and for what you're getting, starting 19th, he's got a fast car. And I think that he could easily pay off that price if he runs a clean race.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting range. I think Briscoe is probably going to be the highest owned just because of, one, he's a little bit cheaper in this range, and two, how far back in the field that he does start. But, does he have the same amount of upside as an Eric Almirola or even an Austin Dillon? I don't know. You kind of have to ask yourself that. Do you think Almirola and Dillon can get a better finishing position and even outscore the place differential points that Briscoe's going to get? Briscoe hasn't had the greatest start to the season, but the two races that we've been at are kind of outliers, I would say. This is kind of a little bit more of the bread and butter of usually what the Cup Series is all about. So I think that's kind of a good strategy, is let's see how Chastain and Briscoe and maybe even Wallace to an extent do at a 1.5, and that might really help us gauge of how heavy we should be on these guys or even off these guys, moving forward. Looking at the 6K range, there's pretty much no one here that I'm really interested in. If I had to pick one, probably Colt Custer. I think he's in the best equipment here. He's been having a pretty good year so far. He can probably stay relatively close to where he starts, but that starting 10th is just a little risky for me. And I'm probably going to be, it's hard for me to get to Colt Custer. But if I had to pick one, I think Custer's the guy to this range. I don't really have any interest in Jones, Stenhouse, Newman, Buescher, and McDowell. Unfortunately, he's having a career year, best year of his life, but starting sixth, I got no interest there.
Fully agree with that. I don't like anybody in this range.
I kind of like Custer. You kind of highlighted him there. Starting 10th, it's a total gamble. But if you're going to gamble on anybody in this range, I like Colt Custer. He's looked really good this year, actually. He's been running well, and then all of a sudden he wrecks and it's all over. But he really has been racing well, and he had a good season last year, and I think he's only going to improve. So for me, Colt Custer, again, I'm talking about sneaky GPP plays a lot, but I think he's another one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I think, one of these guys, or maybe even two of these guys, are going to run well. I don't think any of these guys on this range are going to be high owned. So if you have one of them in your lineup, like Coop said, it's a little sneaky. All right, getting down to the punt plays, same thing as the Xfinity series. If you're paying up for the good guys, you need some of these bad guys. There's basically only two guys down here that are even remotely of interest. That's going to be Daniel Suarez and Anthony Alfredo. I think a lot of people don't realize yet how good of a car Daniel Suarez has. To me, it's basically like a third RCR car. So I think his equipment is pretty similar to Reddick and Austin Dillon's. It's probably not as good, but it's probably very similar to what Penske or what the Wood brothers is to Team Penske, to kind of give you an understanding there. And then Anthony Alfredo, he even came out himself and said, hey, this is his favorite track. This is one that he has circled on the calendar. He's really looking forward to it. So anytime I hear that from a driver, especially in equipment that isn't as good as, the rest of the people that he's racing against, I'm definitely going to be interested there just because of his price. But I think a lot of guys are naturally going to fall on Suarez and Alfredo. So I think both of them are going to be pretty high owned.
Yeah, Suarez is an experienced driver. I think that's easy to forget after, for those that haven't followed the sport for that long. And he's in better equipment this year, it looks like. He's got good speed. And until that price goes up, I think I might be interested in Suarez every week, to be quite honest, unless he's starting higher than 20th. I think right where he's at, out of this range, he's by far and away the best. I mentioned earlier that I was a little hesitant on Chastain and Briscoe because they're rookies, and I feel the same way about Anthony Alfredo. I just need to see a little more just for me to have that feel good. And I wouldn't go below LaJoie. That's as far as I would go.
Yeah, speaking of LaJoie, he doesn't have a crew chief this week. He's got Steve Letarte filling in, former Dale Jr. crew chief, because they had some COVID issues. But I would agree, he's definitely the lowest I would go, and that would only be as a pure punt to differentiate GPPs off of playing Alfredo and Suarez.
Yeah, if you say you pick your five guys and then it says, hey, you have $5,100 left in salary or $5,300 left in salary. If I were you, I would go back up and readjust some of the other five guys. Like as low as you probably want to go is Anthony Alfredo. I don't think you want to be paying for any of these guys down here. I think there's enough value and other good plays up top that you can make one pivot or two and get a significantly better lineup with plugging in an Alfredo or a Suarez instead of, a Huff, a Balicki, a Davison, a Ware, a Hill. You probably don't want one of those guys. And I just don't see some of the top plays scoring significantly more points to justify having one of these guys down here. So that would be my advice. If you have less than 5,500 left in your account there, probably rethink of who you're picking. But all right, guys, that's going to be it. Thank you guys for tuning in again. If you're new here, welcome. Feel free to keep following us as the season, progresses. Feel free to subscribe to our channel. That way you don't miss out on any videos that are coming out. And if you haven't made a lineup already, and if the race hasn't happened yet, hop over and watch our Xfinity series breakdown video as well. But that's going to be it for Homestead. Best of luck to you guys out there this week, and we'll catch you next week.
Good luck, everyone.
Good luck.